Hello, everyone. We are delighted to be here today. I have the pleasure of hosting this webinar with RJ and Victor, and we're looking forward to sharing some great insights. We have about 100 participants on the call, which is great, and the call is going to take about 40 minutes. What I'm going to do first is quickly introduce myself, and I'll give RJ and Victor the opportunity of introducing themselves as well. We'll talk a little bit about Lettuce and Sunday's partnership, and then I will kick off with some provocative questions about the restaurant industry to two of the most successful operators in the US for RJ and in Europe for Victor. So hi, everyone. I'm Christine. I'm the co-founder of Sunday, and I am joining the webinar from Atlanta. And I will go ahead and hand over the mic to RJ so he can quickly introduce himself.
Hi, everyone. RJ Melman here, CEO and president of Let Us Entertain You. For those of you who are not familiar with us, we are a 54-year-old company based in Chicago. We have about 120 restaurants across the United States. And we're privately held. We run all sorts of concepts from 3 Michelin star places back in the day. We don't have one right now, but burger joints, and we kind of do everything in between. So having a lot of fun and having a lot of fun with Sunday as well.
Excellent. And Victor, will you introduce yourself quickly?
Hi, everyone. Victor Lugger, French, currently living in Atlanta, but most usually based out of London. 12 years ago, we started a restaurant group called Big Mama that we're growing. We're actually excited to grow it from 7 countries in Europe to Dubai this year and the US next year. We cook Italian food from, I would say, $40 to $70 average spend. That is our sweet spot, which is very practically affordable luxury. That's how we see ourselves. And 4 years ago, during lockdown, we built this sort of payment facility for us, thinking, oh, how can we just improve our guests' hospitality? And it worked really well, and it became a spin-off, and then it became huge. And today it's called Sunday, which is a spin-off out of Big Mouth.
Christine, before we go farther, Christine, do you think it's possible to put on Victor's subtitles so people can understand him? I think it'll be super helpful for the listening crowd out there.
RJ, I'm glad you're making that joke and not me. Of course, I love to make it as well. The fun part for me in hosting this webinar is that not only are both of you extraordinary operators, but you're also friends. And so hopefully it'll make for a good session.
Friends first, partners second. So it was good.
Awesome. What I'm going to start with is actually a little overview of Sunday and Lettuce's partnership. So we've been partnered for a little over a year now. The partnership is going incredibly well at Sunday. We're delighted. We're live with over 50 restaurants now. And in the background, you can see some of the advantages that Sunday is bringing to Lettuce. I think the first question I want to kick off with is for RJ, and it's to tell us a little bit about why you decided to roll out Sunday at your restaurants. I know we convinced you for that first pilot that we were great partners, but the idea is that the data pushed you to roll out the solution across your portfolio. We'd love to hear a little bit about that.
Yeah, and so why I don't think that we are experts in everything. I think that we have the way our company is structured, that we have a lot of really unique experiences because we do so many different things, because we have 60 different concepts, and because we have different types of restaurants, and we have places that are super casual and formal and different styles of service and quick service and order at the counter. And because we're also a large, I think fairly well-known group, at least within this space, we get approached with a lot of technology. So Sunday is certainly not the first payments solution that we were ever presented. It was not the first one we ever looked at. And we had, I think you know this, a lot of conversations about starting Sunday as a pilot, and you sort of asked and said, let's get together. And we had certainly piloted other things, but I have found with any technology that if the teams enjoy using it, no matter what the technology is, and it's easy to implement. The hurdles to implementing technology are actually pretty low, but they're really high if the team objects to it. And we had tried other payment solutions, and they were not nearly as easily adopted as Sunday. So when we did go into a pilot phase, which on the surface, I will admit, like it does look like other payment solutions. Toast had one integral to its own app. We weren't happy with it. We had tried it out. So it felt like we were trying something else. But you found immediately that the staff, I'm not sure, I think part of it is your training, part of it is your technology is really smooth, part of it is the integration really works. At a high level, the pilots went really well, and it made it a really easy decision to try it out. Actually, as a complement to Toast, when we were thinking about new POSs, we tried Toast at one restaurant, and I think within about a day, our team, who had been an entire universe restaurant group for 100 restaurants, the one team that was at the restaurant were like, yeah, this is super easy. We know how to use it. It didn't take a lot of convincing. And so that is how I feel about Sunday to this day. I find it easy to use. I get compliments from guests that say, I love the simplicity of the payment. I think it's really smart. They don't know that whether Lettuce is helping promote it, involved with it. They just think that it's this cool technology that sort of sits alongside our restaurants. And when you get compliments, it's just really easy to say, let's do it.
Awesome. I love to hear that. I'm going to dive into one of your restaurants, and I'm actually going to let Victor speak to this because it's data that we see across a lot of our Sunday partners. This is RAMEN-SAN, so one of RJ's restaurants, one of the first that we rolled out. And frankly, the data has been incredible. The collaboration has been incredible. And it was one of the use cases we used to pitch for a full rollout with the 50 restaurants we're working with. Victor, do you want to comment a little bit on this, since in your function as a CEO of Sunday, you're familiar with this data?
Before you answer that, Victor, can I jump in and say one thing? That even though we've only rolled out 50 restaurants, we're still planning on rolling out the rest of the company. And I think the data also might be skewed because we have some restaurants that are one restaurant, but it's two public-facing restaurants in one POS. So I don't want anyone to take away from this that we're not using this across the company, or mostly across the company. We have a couple hurdles in restaurants and hotels that don't have integrations done yet, and things like that. But for the most part, we're fully adopted. So I didn't want, even though there's a discrepancy between the 120 restaurants and 50, I didn't want people to think that that's the case. So
thanks. We know that's in the pipeline, but thanks for clarifying. Victor.
I mean, yes, we can talk about the KPI that we see here. What it means is that 93% of people who pass the door at RAMEN-SAN will end up paying on their phone, not with their credit card machine or cash. It generates more tips. It generates huge amount of internal feedback to drive performance better. And it gives RAMEN-SAN a huge presence on Google, which, you know what, if you live in Chicago, you're probably not going to go to RAMEN-SAN because of or against their Google rating. But if you're a tourist, a transient professional, whatever, you will definitely go to RAMEN-SAN if you're looking for this kind of food. And they have a 4.8 and 12,000 reviews on Google rather than to the next Asian/Japanese restaurant. So we could dive into that, of course. What I think is even more interesting here, and the reason I'm happy we have RJ, is eventually, very deep down, the reason to take Sunday is if you as a restaurateur, there is quite a few of you guys in the webinar today, if you think it's better hospitality. It happens that we have raised a lot of money and we do work a lot every day to make this also work for the waiters, work for the P&L, work for your marketing, work for your CFO. Of course, we have created so many KPIs that makes Sunday really work from a back-end perspective. But I don't think the reason to do it is that you're going to save money or have more Googles or etc. I think the real reason to do it is because it is actually better hospitality. And the reason I'm a 7-room user. In Europe, the reasons all of you guys in the US use OpenTable, Resi, 7 rooms, etc., are not because you're going to improve a little how your table turn, etc. It's just because 80 to 90% of people will prefer being able to book from their phone rather than have to call a number. It's just better hospitality. And I think it's better hospitality to give people the option to pay in seconds with their phone, which is the 2021st technology, the 21st century technology to pay seamlessly. And you know what? We don't force them. But what this figure says on that slide is that 93% of them, when being given the choice, eventually do it. And that is, to me, as CEO of Sunday, extraordinarily comforting that we're onto something big. This is not going to disappear. This is just going to increase and grow and grow and grow. And very soon in the future, people will start to be exasperated because what do I really have to wait for the check and then my credit cards and it goes back and then a pen and I have to calculate my tip, etc. I've been eating in 3 restaurants in the last 2 months where I could pay in instance. This is what these slides shows to me.
Thanks, Victor. One note that I want to make is something we've seen has been tremendously successful at Lettuce is the way we've shifted operations, where now at a number of restaurants, including RAMEN-SAN, the team isn't dropping checks anymore, but they're referring to Sunday as a digital bill. And that's really changing the mindset where you're moving away from paper checks and saying, all right, the way you look at your bill, you interact with a bill today in 2025 is you'll scan this. And that has been quite transformational. So super excited to see the results. I'm actually going to switch gears a little bit because I know a lot of people in the audience asked us questions about Victor, RJ, and their general experience in building very successful restaurant companies. And so hopefully you can't see the screen anymore and we can see the 3 of us. I'm going to start with a couple questions for RJ about what it's like to be CEO of probably one of the best restaurant groups in the country, or certainly in the Western world. RJ,
I certainly don't think of my job as that. So, but thank you.
Well, I get to flatter you a little bit because I get to work with a lot of your restaurants. So take it from me. We work with over 2,000 restaurants, and it's absolutely delightful to work with you and your team. But a lot of people wonder how the industry has changed. Your group is over 50 years old. What is very different in 2025 than was 50 years ago, obviously before you were running the show, and what are the things that have stayed the same that you guys as a company value first and foremost?
Well, at a high level, I don't think clearly the world has changed. Technology has changed. I mean, that's sort of obvious that it is not as simple maybe as a world as it was in 1971 when we opened my dad opens his first restaurant with his best friend, for $50,000 in a little burger joint in Lincoln Park. And there's no company, there's no infrastructure. But at the end of the day, I don't actually think our principles of running an organization or a restaurant have really changed. We truly think about restaurants on an individual basis. We don't think about how big we can get. I spent my day working on the development of we're working on a Southeast Asian restaurant. I spent my morning doing that. I'm going to spend my afternoon working on a construction project, something else. Yesterday, we have an Italian restaurant. I was there and we were working through menu changes. And we even though we're big, we think really small. So this business is super simple. You make good food and get in people's mouths. And that has not changed since 1971. And it had, the restaurant business was probably the same in 1901. And hopefully it's going to be the same in 2051. It's just not, that part's not changing. How you make a reservation has changed. How you pay has changed. But I don't know, good food doesn't go out of style, and timeless things don't go out of style. And there always has to be something beyond a gimmick or a thing. It doesn't matter what it is. Nothing lasts forever. And you have to just try to be good at your job every day. And I don't think that attitude has changed at all. And even as we get larger, nothing really changes about our day-to-day about what's happening. And our growth has been pretty organic. It's not to grow as fast or as big as we want to be, but to be the best we can be. And we do projects that we think we can do the best. So it's an evolving landscape, but we still do what we do. So
I love that. I've got one follow-up question on that. You have the reputation, certainly in Chicago, but frankly in your whole footprint of being one of the best employers in the restaurant space.
Okay.
I'm always nervous that our team is going to want to move over to the lettuce team side. Tell us what you're doing specifically to keep your staff and to
Sure.
attract them.
I mean, at the end of the day, we talk about internally our culture of caring, and that that you have to care about yourself first. You have to care about others, and we have a deep kind of philosophical root about um, making sure that you're okay inside the company. And those philosophies did not start with me. They started with my father a long time ago, and caring about why the people are here and making it the best place to work. Like I had a partner. We have about 90 partners in the company, and these are people who have grown and developed with us. A lot of times they started as managers or chefs, and they now are equity stakeholders in the company. And said, like, he had said to a server, like, I don't expect this to be your last job, but I do hope this is your last restaurant job. Like, that hopefully you found a place here. And clearly we are not successful at that all the time. People leave, but we're really proud of our alumni. And this is not the place for everyone to work, but at the end of the day, it's about truly caring about how people are. We've done, I think, historically, a lot of things that have been important. We've had health insurance for our employees well before it was mandated by Obamacare. We're talking about stuff, starting insurance programs in the 1980s, vacation time, things that didn't necessarily exist in this industry. And it doesn't mean that this is like working at Google either, that there's unlimited meals and unlimited time off, and you can work remote or whatever. Like, it's a real in-person job. But I guess at the end of the day, it's truly just about caring for people. And if you have that attitude, if you care about how people are, I guess I just think that works itself out regardless of whatever policy you write or regardless of whatever. It's just who we are, that you want to have nice people. It's like, the other thing we say is that, any job requires two things. You have to make enough money and have fun. And inevitably over time, if you don't have both of those things, it doesn't work. You can make a ton of money and hate what you're doing, and it doesn't work in the long term. And you can love what you're doing and make no money, and you can't survive, and it doesn't work. So I really believe that people have to be in balance, and hopefully we provide that for a lot of people.
Thanks. Super, super genuine and helpful. Victor, you have built a very large group in Europe, so very different approach to hiring people, but maybe you can give us some insights on what's been very successful in the Big Mama group.
RJ mentioned the culture of caring at Lettuce. And then my first thought was, our culture is a culture of growth. And growth from...
Yeah.
Well, not being gross, but growing.
Growth.
Growth. And because we've grown every year pretty significantly, the growth of the company has actually fueled the individual growth of each and every of its parts. And the baseline of Big Mama is change people's life with pizza. We're definitely not changing our guests' life. No one's life is going to be changed because you had lunch or dinner at Big Mama. But if you're working at Big Mama, it's definitely, we hope it's definitely changing your life. And our number one recipe also, because maybe we're only a 12 years old company, is that growth opportunity, going from a country to another. Now we're in 7 countries. We were in 2 countries 3 years ago. And we're opening Dubai and the US. And the guy who's actually opening Dubai for us started with us as a sub-manager in the city of Lyon in France. And the guy who's taking over in Lyon was a back bar, like someone that has 0 qualification whatsoever, started with us age 18, and is going to be the manager of that 7 million restaurants in Lyon, where the guy from Lyon is moving to Dubai. That growth has enabled people to join us and think, this is a path for me to change my life. And that recipe is, I would say, is really at the core of what we do. And I can't comment, contrary to RJ, on what has changed in 50 years. But what I've witnessed is what changes from a country to another as we've moved across Europe and as we plan on actually coming to the US. And what is changing a lot is the recipe to deliver these just great restaurants that never get out of fashion. And the number one recipe we have to figure out is how do you excite, motivate, and enroll your staff, your team, to be the team to deliver that. And that recipe is rather different in Germany and in London, because people working restaurants in Munich are actually very different from people working restaurants in London. And as we plan on coming to the US, I mean, if RJ's restaurants are successful, if Steven Starr's restaurants are successful, if Gibson's are successful, I hope Big Mama can be successful from a client standpoint. But how are we going to be able to deliver the same vibe in the team and just motivate people to join that adventure like these groups do is the real challenge, because the way people think about working in restaurants in Miami is actually even very different from the way they think in Chicago, which is itself different from how it works in California. So that's what I think is the hardest, but also the most effective to figure out.
Great. That's a good transition into some of the more burning questions that we've gotten ahead of this. The one that came up the most is, which restaurant opening are each of you most excited about in your respect?
I've spent all my day. We're doing a Southeast Asian restaurant called Crying Tiger, and I have amazing couple chef partners, a kid named Matt Reardon and a chef named Tai Dang, who's up for a James Beard Award this year, and he has his own restaurant. He actually started his career as a young line cook with us at our 3 Michelin star restaurant El2O, which is no longer around. It's actually why he moved to Chicago to work there. And through a long term of events, he opened his own restaurant, and now is going to keep his own restaurant, but we're doing this Southeast Asian restaurant together. And it's being designed by a British-based designer, David Collins Studios, who just did our restaurant Tradita over at the St. Regis, and just like probably, in my opinion, one of the best designers in the world. And just really excited about this very cool Southeast Asian restaurant. I love the food. It's something we really haven't done like this, certainly ever. And I'm pretty pumped about where it's going. And the food that I've been tasting is what gets me really excited.
Nice. Which neighborhood and when can we?
It's in River North, and I hope it'll open sometime between May and June. But you never know. So.
Awesome, Victor. What about you?
Two things come to mind. In the summer, we're going to open our first Italian grill in the city in London. And that has definitely to do with my moving to the US and just enjoying steakhouses across the country and learning what it is to properly cook meat here in the US and trying to bring that back with our Italian touch in Europe. That's one.
Wait, I have a question about that. Where are you going to be sourcing your meat from now that you've lived in the US for a couple months?
Old French cows.
Mostly from Scotland, where they managed. It's the least worst meat on that side of the Atlantic, and some of it from the US. Our B Corp certification and our is taking a hit here, but you can't nail everything down. And then the second one is definitely Miami. For 2 years, we've been talking with restaurateurs across the country, trying to figure out how to make it in America, until one of them told us, but I can't help you answer your question. We just live here, and we have 3 restaurants around the corner, and we make restaurants for the communities that we like and we love. And I thought that's exactly the way I was thinking when we opened in Paris in the first place. And so I called Tigran, my co-founder, and I said, that's the thing that makes the most sense I've ever heard in 2 years touring America. And he said, well, I'm going to move to Miami. So Tigran is moving to Miami this summer, and he'll open a restaurant around the block and for the community where his kids go to school and he lives on an everyday basis. So that's actually the reason why I'm so excited.
Awesome. All right. Another one, which is, I think, a great question, is if you had to steal an idea from another restaurant operator, what would it be?
Like a concept or just an idea? I mean, because
idea, concept, anything that somebody else does incredibly well, which you're dying to do.
I mean, I'm not going to kind of non-answer your question, because what I actually think is creativity is usually built on doing research. And I don't think there's as many new or creative ideas out there as people think. And what I mean by that is like I have a collection of old cookbooks, and you'd think that, every time you see a food item, you're like, oh, that's never been done before. And I have this like vintage cookbook from the 1910s. It might be from the 1890s or something like that. And then there's a recipe for edamame in it and a bunch of food that you would never think, I'd feel like Japanese leaning stuff wouldn't have made it to the US by then. It's a US cookbook. And I think the reality is a lot of things that you see creatively are repackaged. They're cyclical. Are they at the right time? So, I mean, I see stuff all the time that I'm inspired by. That is like my whole life, whether it's on Instagram, magazines, in real life, when I'm traveling, when I'm eating somewhere, and it sort of applies at different times to what I'm working on. You don't, when you have a lot of restaurants, it's not, I don't spend all day thinking about all of them. I think about one of them. And you could walk by a storefront 100 times and not have it apply, but as soon as that storefront applies to the restaurant that you're working on, it like instantly clicks. So it's like it's hard for me to say there's like something that that makes that I'm just dying to steal. But I also just want Big Mama's beef carpaccio specifically. So I think they do a great job.
I like that. Victor, what about you? Anything that you've seen out there potentially in your U.S. travels that you think? I mean, you talked about the steakhouse.
Yeah, we're doing a grill. How many times have I sneaked in the kitchen in America and say, "Oh, could I just see your grill line, etc." So these are all the little details. Actually, I have a few friends who called me in America in the last 5 years and said, "Oh, can I steal your idea of the bottles? You're not going to be offended." And I said, "Oh, please take it." So we steal a lot from each other. As long as you don't steal everything from the same guy who's at the end of the street, I think it's okay. I think the frustration we've had at Big Mama for the longest that we have not resolved yet, and I'm not losing hope that one day we will, is how some amazing restaurant groups, and RJ has one of them, manage to make different cuisine at a very high level of engagement, authenticity, etc. The US has numerous examples of such groups. And as much as we have nailed how to go from a place to another, from a city to another, from a country to another, and this is something we have worked out how to do that, and we're good at it. Doesn't mean we're never going to fail, but we're good at that. We have never ever succeeded in doing anything else but Italian. And if you think of it, you could have a French version of Big Mama. We're French after all, so we understand French cuisine, and yet we haven't managed to do that. I think one of the reasons is that we're still very ingrained in our culture around the codes of Italy, around the fact that 80% of our staff is Italian, etc., which is probably what is limiting us. But I wish I knew how to onboard a Japanese chef, a French chef, partner with that guy, make a deal that's great for him or for her, and a deal that's great for us, and grow that. And I think here we really have still a lot to learn.
Great. Before I open up the floor to questions, there are a ton of questions directly from the audience live now. I have one question for both of you, which as a food tech professional, I'm curious about, is there a hospitality trend today that scares you? And when you see what's shifting in our space, is there something where you're saying, damn, that's going to change this and not in the direction I'd like it to go?
No, I mean, it's a good question, but I don't have anything that like scares me. What scares me is like the world, the business itself is getting harder, more expensive to build restaurants, harder to do them, regulation, that sort of thing. But nothing like technologically scares me. I don't. Actually, I'll answer it a little differently. Someone came to me and they're like, "Aren't you so worried about Ozempic and Mounjaro, like the diet, the weight loss drugs, making you lose business?" And I was like, not really. Like it doesn't seem, at least I feel like where Let Us Entertain You plays, that any of it is going to replace the need to be out in public. If you would ask me during the pandemic, do I think that people will never eat out again? I mean, clearly like they're like, oh, people don't want to be near people, and they don't want to. They're just going to have to-go food forever, and none of that played out, right? People end up seeing people in person. So I mean, I haven't seen anything that totally changes public behavior, that they want good stuff or good food and good company and good ambiance and good people. I don't know. There's nothing that changes that about me. I suppose there could be some world where, you know, eating becomes completely commoditized and, you know, like literally almost digital, and then maybe that changes our business, but we're a long ways away from that happening. So,
Victor, what do you think?
you're on mute, buddy.
Yeah.
So it's my job to think that technology is first an opportunity and then only a threat. So I'm very progressively sort of open-minded about technology. I would, and by the way, if you think about people around us in our families, etc., who do not work in hospitality, everyone's job is being so much more transformed and endangered or challenged right now with AI than us in hospitality. I still need to find that major shift in our industry that's going to happen because of AI. I mean, all of us think about it, and no one has still come with this big change in hospitality. So I think we're actually right now being less transformed than most of the industries around us.
Yeah, the bigger threat might be that a lot of jobs disappear, and that it's harder for us to work in a world where there's less jobs. But the actual job itself of being an in-person serving food doesn't seem to be going anywhere. But it doesn't seem like technology can replace eating. And it seems like the guest still wants to be in public. So until two of those things change, it doesn't seem like there's something coming imminently.
And none of us is in the commodity service of just feeding people, which will be transformed faster than our segment by robotic, etc. So I think we're pretty okay. I think one of the danger I see, but I don't see an imminent threat right now, is every technology that eventually comes between us, restaurateur, and our guests and steals the guest from us. I think every technology that gives us more insight about our guests. This is the way we've built Sunday. This is the guest Shopify does its business. This is the way 7 Rooms does its business, which is why we chose them in the first place, because they are here as a B2B serving us. We pay them, it's expensive, but I know the value I get, and I know more about my guests, and I can engage more with them and know more about them. And this is technology helping me connect with my guests. Every technology that sort of steals my client from me and resells me my clients, and the whole second market of bookings, etc. I think this is more where we're wary these days, but I couldn't name one big threat.
Yeah, I mean, I love what both of you are saying. You're obviously providing an incredible in-restaurant experience in both of your restaurant groups, and so I certainly don't see any either.
At the end of the day, Christine, we're both pretty long on restaurants, so like we better hope it works out, because neither of us have another job. So we're screwed if it doesn't play itself out.
Well, potentially we've got some opportunities in technology. I have
revolve around restaurants. So
I have a good question that comes back to Sunday from the audience that just came in, which I want to ask both of you. What do you think about putting QR codes on your tables? And I think the underlying question here is, you have really attractive, gorgeous restaurants. RJ, you talked about the designer you're using for your new restaurant.
The solution is really simple. Like we have some restaurants where it's appropriate that the QR code sits on the table and it sits there the entire meal. And then we have some restaurants that basically drop the QR code like it's a check. And they said, here's your payment. You can settle up here by scanning the QR code. And that is no different than saying you can settle up by handing us your credit card. And so you're right. We have fine dining restaurants where it is not appropriate that a QR code sits on the table the whole time. Or at least it's not appropriate today. It might be more normalized, and that's how we solve it. So I have no issue.
I will add, RJ, that your team has done a great job at designing QR codes that are adapted to each of your restaurants. And so we have different formats, and usually they blend in pretty nicely. I'm obviously promoting what we're doing, but it ends up working well. Victor, how do you object to why would I put a QR code on my gorgeous table?
I think, well, I'm French, so I think I know better than everyone in general. In particular, as far as data and Sunday is concerned, I think I really know better. But here is a topic where, hey, this is your table. Like, I'm a restaurateur, and what's going to happen on my table? It's the core of my job to set the table the way I like, which goes with my vision. So we respect that, which is also why in Michelin star restaurants, in an omakase with 9 tables, you don't have a QR code standing on the table the whole time, of course. And so, I mean, I don't have much to answer to what RJ said, except that because I'm biased and maybe because I like tech from a personal perspective in my life, I think it makes it easier. When I see a QR code on the table, rather than having to wait for it, it actually generates me a neutral emotion. Like, do I think it's beautiful? Yeah, no, not at all. Do I think it's ugly? Does it waste my time? It doesn't. Is it better or worse than the salt and pepper? No. But it creates a positive emotion in me throughout the whole meal to know that whenever I want to go, I own that moment. So for me, it reduces that stress. But I'm not going to argue with anyone who says, I get it, but not all my guests are like you, and so I'd rather drop it at the end. It's your restaurant. But I think people underestimate the positive emotion of just, whenever we want to go, we can. And so we're going to enjoy the time we have now even better because we have taken this off our mind. But that's my very personal Sunday CEO bias.
Yeah, I'm obviously biased, but I like both the answers. All right, I've got another interesting, provocative question that came in is, what is each of your biggest career mistakes? And what's the comeback story from those?
It's important to remember that failure is not a destination, that failure is a time and place. And everyone's like, oh, this restaurant is successful. Well, that's like, by what standard is a restaurant successful? You get a lot of congratulations that, oh my God, congratulations, you opened a new restaurant. You're like, that's like congratulations on someone having a baby. The real mark of success of being a parent, in my opinion, is probably, did that person not grow up to be a criminal, murderer, something like that? Like, are they a successful, productive member of society? As someone who has 2 little kids, it's like having the child is the easy part. So,
I don't know about that.
We have failed. I'm sorry, I should say, I mean, I know a lot of people struggle with childbirth. I'm not trying to be
I'm kidding you.
Obtuse to that. But we have had restaurants that start really well. We have had restaurants that have not done well. It is important to understand what isn't going well. The most frustrating business that you can be in is one that's in the middle. It's actually super helpful if it's a complete failure, and it's super helpful if it's a complete success. The one that is just breaking even or just needs 10 more covers a day to make money, those are the worst businesses to be part of. But like on a total, I don't want to say failure level, but we did a French restaurant called Paris Club. It's actually was directly below where I'm sitting now. And we did one of our larger restaurants as this big French restaurant. As it turns out, we had too many seats, I think, for doing like kind of a little more esoteric kind of French restaurant. I knew I made it too big, but the cool thing about the turnaround is that we cut the space in half. It is now an Italian restaurant called Il Porcellino that does great. And it's also the first RAMEN-SAN. They work out of the same kitchen, but we created 2 restaurants out of it. We have 4 RAMEN-SANs now. It's been a success story. We're looking at doing a second Il Porcellino. Both of them have turned completely around. They're hugely successful. And we took a problem that we had, which was an underserving restaurant or underperforming restaurant in a good location, and figured out what to do with it. And it's trying to, and it wasn't sticking it out being Paris Club. So it helped that it had slowed down. So, I mean, I can think of a dozen of those things where we've had to work on something. And the most satisfying thing is when something's not working and you make it work. Like that's the best feeling in the world. So.
Victor, what about you? And then I've got a good question from the audience that I'm going to close with.
Well, then I'm going to be quick. I think one thing I try to remember is we need to always plan for success when we think about a new restaurant. If you don't plan for success, if you don't say, okay, I'm going to go for the moon, I'm going to open, say, in Paris, and yes, I can do 10 million top line. And if you're like shy, oh, it's Paris, maybe I'm only going to do 7. And if you don't plan, if you're not brave enough to think about it can work, then you're not going to take the good location with the high rents. You're going to go for the tier 2 location because it has a cheaper rent. And then you're going to underinvest in works because like, oh, I can't put 5 million in a restaurant that's going to do 7. Well, so you put 3 and then you do 5. Whereas if you're like, I can do 10, you're going to invest 5 and then you're going to do 12. And worst of all, if you don't plan for success, you're going to be understaffed for opening, which we did so many times. And when you're understaffed for opening, then you just fuck up your opening. And all of these become self-realizing prophecies. And then you fail your restaurant and you're like, what had I say? It was impossible to do 10 million. Well, it's impossible to do 10 million because we underinvested all along the way because we wouldn't believe we could do it. And yes, so it's about navigating the fact that you have to be very humble, in particular when you open, say, a new city. We've done that a lot. You want to be humble, but you also need to believe that you can actually beat the markets. If not, you're doomed to fail. This is something we think about a lot.
Great insight. All right, we have a couple minutes left. I'm going to ask one last question and then give you guys each the mic if you want to close with anything. I have Anthony in the audience who's asking, when I have the same question, so it's a good one. When is the Big Mama lettuce collaboration for a restaurant happening?
I'm going to pass on that.
I know I'm putting you guys in the hot seat. It's fun.
I think it would be a lot of fun. I honestly think the best chance of it happening, if it does happen, would be in Europe, not in America. If that's my truth, but I think it would be a lot of fun to work with Victor. I am proud to be his partner in a very small way in Sunday, and I think there's nothing better than working with your friends. And if we found a way to do that, I would welcome it. And like I said, I think there's more chance of it happening in Europe than anywhere. But it would be a lot of fun. We'd laugh a lot. Probably wouldn't make any money, but we'd laugh a lot. So.
Yeah, that's probably the problem for any American restaurateur going to Europe. It's the money you do there is ridiculously low towards
but we'd have great weekends with our wives, and we'd smoke cigars and eat good food and walk all over London or Paris or something like that, some of the great cities of the world, and have a lot of fun together. So I hope that one day that happens.
If we close this, I've got one question for RJ, which is, why, in your opinion, is Sunday a CEO matter? Why is it not something? Why do you actually get involved in this and not just directly your CTO, your CMO, of course, your head of ops, etc.? Why is it a CEO matter?
Well, it matters in my organization just because of how we're structured, and I think that that we have a lot of independent voices, and I kind of explained we have a lot of different partners and people run in different directions. But from our perspective, like I still like to direct the narrative of how we're doing things and seeing things, and if they're starting to make sense, how to get the best practices that might even start in one restaurant and get it to the other restaurants. But that is, at the end of the day, like the metrics of payment at the table through Sunday are pretty dramatic. Higher tips for employees, quicker turn time, check average, like all the things that matter to how you actually run a business here. Which, by the way, higher gratuities means happier people. Like that, if you don't think that matters, then what are you doing running a restaurant group? Like those are all the things that matter. So I don't know.
Thank you.
For me, it's inseparable from thinking about anything that touches the guest and the employees. Has to be a CEO matter. I mean, truly, like we're talking about a piece of technology that that affects the lives of the people who work here and the lives of the guests. How can you not even think about it as something that as running an organization, not think about it? It's inconceivable to me.
Interesting perspective. Thank you.
What we observe, I do a lot of sales for Sunday, is that if we talk to the owner or the CEO of the company, very quickly you see their marketing benefits, operational benefits, finance benefits, and that's when it all comes together. And if we stick to just one of the functions, it's harder to get through with new technology because, frankly, as operators, you guys have so many technology options out there.
And I just want to say, Victor, my answer to that was like, it's not, that answer isn't about Sunday. That answer is about any technology that interfaced with employees and guests. Like, how do you not think about how that intersects with your company? Like that's.
What I was thinking is, because I started looking and developing Sunday, we had this shift back at Big Mama where Tigran and I got way more involved into our booking system, into our HR management system. I mean, 80% of my guests book in my restaurants. So this is something that touches 80% of my staff. Same with HR workforce management. If you have a great workforce management, it's transformative, both of course your P&L, but your staff retention. So, we didn't do that in the past. And I think the Sunday experience got me into, hey, it's actually my job to look at this stuff.
There's no job too small within this organization. So like that is my own, but this isn't like who our cable data provider is. Like this, this is not technology like what Wi-Fi, WAPs we're using. This is something that intersects with the two most important things that are here, which is guests and employees. So it's just like I said, any technology that does that is inconceivable that the top leadership isn't looking at.
Very, very much aligned. All right, we are actually out of time. So I want to thank both of you. A huge thanks to RJ for joining. The partnership with Let Us Entertain You is frankly delightful. The Sunday teams love working with you guys, and it's fun to see
you
on screen together. And Victor, as always, a pleasure hosting these events with you guys. So to our audience,
thanks very much.
Good day, and
thanks everyone.
Until next time. Bye.
Bye-bye.